Oh yeah, I'm starting.
Yes, you are. That went well.
That's
staying in the video. That's staying in the video.
Everything's staying in the video. We don't. This is
the
raw
uncut
into
bit.
our souls.
Go on.
This is the bit where we have to pretend we're throwing to an ad that we're not really throwing to, because that'll happen in the
in the bit we've done now, which you may have heard on the podcast already. All of that.
You may not have seen that. Anyway, let's get going. This is the final word. India Daily. Day one from the MCG, the Boxing Day test. It happened. We got a test match on in Melbourne. It was a beautiful day. It still is. The sky is blue. The birds may be singing somewhere. The grass is golden. Adam Collins is with me. I'm Jeff Lemon. Australia batted. It didn't necessarily go very well, but you're going to tell us all about that in 30 seconds or fewer.
I am, with no notes. It's such a glorious day. I want to devote 20 seconds to that, really, but no. Australia batted first, won the toss, all out 195. Only one partnership of any note. That was between Labuschagne and Head, who are out for 48 and 38, respectively, in the middle session, and pretty much that's all she wrote, all out 195. In response, though, India, 1 for 31. 1 for 36, that number from last week, 36. So Stark in the book immediately. Shubman Gill looking magnificent overnight. Big day tomorrow.
So what you're saying is, theoretically, 9 for none tomorrow, and India could still be bowled out for 36 again.
I'm saying it's a chance, as a movie once said. I neglected to mention the Indian bowlers, by the way. Bumrah 4, repeating almost the dose from here 2 years ago. Ashwin, just outstanding. People speak of his record in Australia since 2000. So in his first two tours to Australia, he averaged 60. In the last 3 tests he's played in Australia, he averages 17. So, I mean, let's keep things in perspective. He's got better as a bowler in these conditions, the older he has been in this part of the world. And then 2 to Mohammad Siraj on debut. We've been talking about him for a couple of years. I'm so thrilled for him. Bowled beautifully.
It was a thrilling bowling performance from India today. I think a lot of people will look at Australia's batting and go, oh, shit day for Australia. Oh, well, I can't say that. And go, maybe I can. They'll say bad day for Australia. Therefore, I didn't want to see it. But you did want to see it. You did love to see it, because if you liked cricket, because it was a contest today. And the fact that India bounced back after getting absolutely humiliated in Adelaide, I wasn't expecting that to happen at all. I thought Australia would just grind out big runs when they won the toss and batted, and it didn't happen.
A few things here. First of all, fantastic pitch. I mean, to the credit of Matt Page, all the pressure on this guy last year after the 2 dud pitches in a row. Good pitch last year, fantastic pitch today. It meant that losing the toss and bowling on a warm, not hot day was no problem, because they weren't having to steam in on a dung heap as it was here in the corresponding fixture in 2018. They were bowling on a track with genuine life and grass on it as well, and Bumrah took advantage of that early on, and Siraj did later as well. But so I think that played a role. It was, in a way, a great toss for India to lose, because they didn't have to face that interrogation on Boxing Day after being all out 36 on Saturday a week ago. They were able to sort of get over the hump by bowling initially and doing such a good job with the ball that we've kind of stopped talking about all out 36 already.
Yeah, I mean, there was enough confidence coming out of it, and the way that Ashwin bowled, particularly like coming on before lunch, day one of a test at the MCG, you don't necessarily expect the visiting off spinner to be the incisive one, but he was. I mean, there was just that sense of danger all the time, and Marnus, look, he made 48, but he didn't look comfortable the whole time. Like, he just looked a bit off. He was backing away from his stumps and trying to cut off his stumps repeatedly. Just things like that made me think he's not on here. Very
white ballish cricket, wasn't it? The backing away and playing through cover routinely, the taking on the leg side trap as well, which he also did at Adelaide and kind of got away with it after being dropped at long leg. But top scored with 48. You can't sort of criticise the bloke too much, I suppose, in that context. But yes, he's not anywhere near as fluent as he was this time last year. It's not criticism,
but it's just interesting that he doesn't look on. He didn't look on in Adelaide, and he didn't look on here.
No, I agree with you. And as far as Ashwin's concerned, they bowled 13 overs of spin before lunch. That's the most. I think when they hit 11, that's the most number of overs of spin on morning one at the MCG since 1985, when India had a triple-pronged spin attack. Very different pitch in the mid-80s.
The morning of 1985. I remember it well.
Yes.
It was a balmy day. It was 23 degrees. No.
Well, there's probably about 23,000 people in the MCG. Probably more there today than there was then, when the attendances weren't quite as big. Anyway, I digress. The Ashwin spell was supreme either side of lunch. The way he picked up Steve Smith, the ball before it, which bit and bounced and went down for 4 byes. Ball after that, Smith on the front foot waiting for it. The leg side trap, I mean, to the immense credit, I put this on Twitter, to the immense credit of Kohli, now Rahane, and generally Team India for coming to Australia with a plan. Not the bog standard 3 slips in a gully and we'll try and do it the Australian way and hopefully it'll pay off, but their own plan, which would have been informed by what they saw with New Zealand last year, but it's worked. Smith caught round the corner, Labuschagne caught round the corner, albeit off the seamer of Siraj later, and they've offered something different, and so far it's working. Good on them.
What is the likelihood, if you said to someone, 2 weeks ago, Steve Smith will make 2 runs in 3 hits to start the series? Has that ever happened? It probably never happened in his career.
No, last week was his... he'd never had a test match where he scored fewer than 4 runs. Last week was 2. But how's this? His 5th duck in Test cricket today. Can you remember the last one?
No.
Yeah, we were there, surprisingly. Not surprisingly. It was at the Wacker in 2016 against South Africa. So it's been 1,514 days since Steve Smith made a Test match duck. So 5 in his career, but most of them were, at the start before his incredible run. So, he's obviously out of form. Hard to read too much into the body language because he's always a tetchy guy, but just, watching it through the binoculars today, there's a lot going on with him right now in terms of between balls. Whether there's something in that, I don't know, hard to know. Maybe we should call his confidant, Morris Duffy, who we had on the show in the past. He might be able to read more into it than we can, but he was very agitated today.
Everyone's agitated. Jim Maxwell was asking, when's the last time that Australia, in the first innings, got done for under 200 in the first 2 tests of the summer? And so I looked this up, and it's happened 4 times: 1887, 1901-2, 1978 when it was the worst team Australia's ever rolled out, and 1984 when the Windies were pretty good. Those are the only times it's happened, aside from this year.
Well, and you build on that by saying that since 98 all out, 10 years ago to this day, when England ran wild and essentially retained the Ashes won the Ashes in the space of a session and a half. Well, since then there have been 9 Test matches at the G, and in the first innings of those matches, the average score is 389. So by that measure, Australia are the better part of 200 in the red. I mean, granted, that's not completely reasonable because the pitch is now clearly different and they've got an incredible fast bowling lineup, but it puts it into some context how poorly they performed today.
I looked at, I think, the last 7 years since 2013 maybe, and there'd never been a match in which at least one of the teams hadn't made 400 in their first innings. Sometimes 500 or 600, and that's the way it had gone. So Joe Burns a duck today, Matthew Wade a really poor shot when he'd made 30, looked good. Swept a 4 from Ashwin and then thought, I think I'll try to put him in the stands just for fun. And it's like, what if you're trying to be a test opener and nail down your spot, surely you think maybe not before the first hour on day one?
I feel like Wade's going to fall into this trap of being criticised when he's played the way that he did last week, 8 off 50, 60 balls, whatever it was. And today when he took it to India and batted quite nicely for the first hour before getting out, I suppose it's the happy medium if he wants to be a long-term contender as an opener. On the other side of it, Joe Burns' 4th duck this season. He's batted 12 times, 9 scores in single digits, I think I worked out earlier. To me, it's becoming clearer and clearer that if David Warner returns for the 3rd Test match, it's kind of hard to sustain the argument that Head should go, I think, on balance, even though Head's dismissal again today, we've seen him fall often in the 30s in Test cricket. So he's not completely out of the woods as far as being an automatic selection, but I can't see them investing another test in Burns in this kind of form. And it was a tough 10-ball duck, let's be honest, compared to Head, who did put on that 85 with Labuschagne today. They're not going to leave him out. And Wade, I just feel as though it's not likely they'll pull him out when he's the more in form of the 2 openers. I guess it's the deductive reasoning, but that's where I'm up to.
And Head making a score in the 30s and being caught at gully is kind of classic Travis Head. But it wasn't a waft that time. That was Bumrah coming round the wicket, getting the angle into him and squared him up. But he was only trying to defend it. He wasn't actually pushing at the ball. It was one where he wasn't really culpable for it. I thought it was a pretty decent piece of bowling that got him out.
Yeah, and again, great captaincy from Rahane to bring him back at the right time. So they needed a wicket, turned to Bumrah. Before lunch, needed a second wicket, turned to Bumrah. He was used at the right time. And also at the end, I know he took a bit of tap from Nathan Lyon, but I mean, put that to one side. That'll happen when the tail is swinging. I think on the whole, Bumrah, 4 wickets, outstanding. And again, I want to return to Mohammad Siraj. Again, we've talked about him a lot on the long form Final Word show. Huge fan. And he kind of showed that today. He bowled up in the mid 140s, super consistent. I love the way that he's able to bowl off cutter, out swinger. That's a bowler who's got serious skills. And to do it on Boxing Day, I mean, I'm just chuffed for him.
Yeah, and the way he knocked over Cameron Green was outswinger, in ducker, completely cleaned him up, just trapped him leg before wicket. It's one of those ones where Green's hit on the back leg and he just started walking. Yeah. And Payne was like, hey, hang on. You have to review it. We've got 3 left. And he was like embarrassed that he had to review it because he felt it. He knew he was out. So there was that dismissal, and there was Marnus as well. The one that wasn't given just before the lunch break, he swept at Ashwin. Nice off break that pitched in line, or it was from around the wicket, drifts in, pitches in line, straightens, hits him while he's kneeling to sweep. Umpire gives it. It's stone dead. And Hawkeye says, no, that's going to the moon. Like, that ball's just taking off and it will never come back down, like BT style. Like, what was with that? I think Hawkeye is good on line, but it just doesn't. I don't believe that it reads bounce properly off a wicket.
And it seems to be with spinners more than with seamers. Look, I feel like when there's a bad Hawkeye, I think that when there's a Hawkeye decision that goes against our cricket IQ, anyone that's watched a minute of cricket in their life knows that
out.
Feels out.
You give it out.
And whether it's going over the top on Hawkeye's projection or not, because it feels so out, it kind of undermines the entire DRS process. So it's a tough one, because I think that DRS has improved cricket and improved umpiring and improved decision making. But moments like that mean that we have the debate again, and understandably so. And I suppose there's a sense that, like you say, Jeff, that line it's fine, but on bounce, historically, I mean, Jared brought up on our commentary today that Ashes Test match at Adelaide in 17-18, where 7 DRS reviews said the ball was going over the top, and we're looking like, hang on, how's that even possible? So whether the settings have been adjusted, I don't know. But there's certainly a discussion to be had about the effectiveness of that measure.
It's a bit like if you ever played the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater, there was a mode you could put on that was like lunar gravity mode, where you could just get super good air and just do like 8 like McTwists flips and then land it again. It's pretty much like that with DRS. I think it's just like, woo! Off you go into the sky. The tea break, the little Dino moment, that was really nice. His family came out, brought out his bat and his cap and his sunnies and put them out in the middle, and then James Pattinson, a fine Victorian, a fine young Victorian, came out with KL Rahul, an honorary Victorian, debuted at the MCG, and they carried them off and put them in the players' enclosure by the boundary line for the rest of the match. It was nice.
Kind of nailed that. I mean, it wasn't too long. The whole thing ran for 6 minutes, but it totally hit the spot. I was watching it with Pete Lawler in the back of the comm box, and we were both like, sort of, quite emotional, but not as in crying, literally emotional in that sense of the word. But it pulled the heartstrings in the way that you'd expect for someone who left such a massive impression on this ground. He loved the MCG, and I think that was a fitting send-off, that he'd have one more magical moment with his family there. The baggy green, even the sunglasses was a great touch, and how they put them on top of the baggy green. And I gather, I haven't seen this, but I think they've put them on the boundary line, the baggy green and the sunnies, so he can watch this test again. A lovely touch.
Yeah, and the last session, 2 things I really loved with the 2 bowling attacks. One, that the Indians finished off Australia. They didn't let them have one of those cheeky tail wags. Nathan Lyon hit a 6 and a 4, but then he was out. And then it was the Australian bowling attack coming out, and that bit at the end of the day where it comes alive. And we talked about this just before we started shooting, where the MCG looks empty when it has 25,000 people in it, which it did by the end, and they're scattered all over the place. But when they started reacting vocally, it sounded full. There was the ooh and the ah and the ooh, and the sort of sounds like when Homer's searching around under the couch for a $20 note. But it felt like it came to life at that point, and that was my favourite bit of the day, the last few overs.
I think one of the great things about Test cricket around the world is that grounds do have different sounds. And the MCG has the U's and the R's and the smacking the advertising boardings as a player's running in late in the day. Something about the way the sun kisses the pitch and the shadows coming over the top from the Great Southern Stand. The whole thing brought together. I mean, player of the day for mine actually is the MCG crowd. Spread staccato like,
That's very like a diplomatic Time Person of the Year thing, where it's like all of you, you've all put in.
But I just feel like it's our show. We can do what we want. My impression was that we will never see a configuration like that at the MCG again. Hopefully, I mean, outside of this Test match, we'll never see patrons allocated the way they were, and something about it just worked. I mean, if you're watching a football game when there's 29,000 people there, it has there's 27, I think. It can sound like, not that there's nobody there, but it can sound concentrated. Today it did have that wall of sound, if you like, feel, even though it was a third full. So again, credit to the Melbourne public for putting in the hard yards during lockdown, which permitted them to come to the cricket today. And they did in healthy numbers, and it really did hit the spot. It felt special today.
Well, we like to hand out Player of the Day, but given that Ravi Ashwin will probably get it 7 or 8 more times over the next few weeks, he can probably afford to not have it today.
And Shubman Gill will get it tomorrow.
And we'll give it to the Player of the Day. Yeah, that's the last thing we should mention before the break. We'll do Hall of Fame after the break, and we haven't mentioned Ravindra Jadeja's catch. And those things are not coincidences. You can put 2 and 2 together. But Shubman Gill, the way he came out, the wicket falls early. Stark picks one up. They've been done for 30 in their last innings. Shubman Gill's on debut, and he's like, you know what? I think I'm just going to ping half a dozen boundaries and be 30 not out by stumps.
He was just brilliant. I mean, you hear close watchers of the game who've seen him in the underage cricket. Chris Rogers saying he was far and away the best player in the 19s World Cup in 2018 when he was looking after the Australian team. And you kind of look forward to a day like today. 15 Indian men have made 100 on debut. I reckon it'll be 16 when we're talking tomorrow. He is just on big time.
Yeah, he's made double hundreds against pretty much all of the A teams.
Yes, that's right.
He averages 70 odd in first class cricket. So, tomorrow should be interesting. Let's have a break. Then we'll have Hall of Fame. Then we'll cast forward on the India Daily. We're not actually going to have a break.
So
yet.
what we do now is we
pretend
slot in
had
the break we recorded last week in Adelaide.
And then it's all lies. It's a hall of lies. It's a palace of mirrors. Don't tell anyone. This is the final word, India Daily, coming to you from out the front of the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which is right behind us here, where some people have had a very nice day. So have we. Just getting on the train this morning, and it was full of people, and we were going to the cricket, and the sun was out, and it was heating up, and I was just like, this year has sucked so much, but at least we get this before the end.
I felt I'd personally earned that walk, having lived in London through this, and I went through the Fitzroy Gardens. Instead of getting public transport all the way, I made a point of walking through Treasury Gardens, Fitzroy Gardens, and then down here what do they call it, the Parade of Champions, and the sculptures, which I know quite a lot about, having written about them, long essay a few years ago, and that was very special. Not a cloud in the sky. We already talked about the crowd, but that experience of going to the G on Boxing Day, it's something that we grow up cherishing and looking forward to, like it is our Christmas in this city. And I think today more than ever before.
I think particularly for me personally, having on Christmas Eve had the moment, you prepare everything, you get it all ready, everything's stocked, and then I went to make a drink at about 11:30 p.m. and I was like, why are the ice cubes melted? And then I was like, the fridge is broken on Christmas Eve with all of the stuff in it. And now we have to go and buy 40 bags of ice and put everything in Eskies. So for that alone, I deserved a nice day on Boxing Day. And it was that. We had good cricket. We've got a match set up. The Indians are in it. Hall of Fame, for me, couldn't be anything else. Ravindra Jadeja, so Matthew Wade, let me try to sketch it for you, a movie made of words, if you will. Matthew Wade going over the onside, sort of skies it, it's very high. Jadeja's at mid-on. He's got to run around about 40 metres, running back, tracking back, looking over his shoulder, and that's hard enough as it is. But Shubman Gill on debut is like, I'm going to take a catch, and he's just galloping for it. He's got no right to it. He's coming from cover. Jadeja's calling, mine, doesn't hear him. Literally, it was a contested mark at the MCG. Jadeja wore Shubman Gill at full tilt to his chest and still took the catch, coming over his shoulder, running back with the flight. It was unbelievable. I genuinely think that's got to be the best catch I've seen. More than a dive over the boundary rope. To do it in contested play, in a pack, that doesn't happen in cricket.
Yeah, the presence of mind to put his hand out 3 or 4 times saying, mine, and the bloke still running at him, Gill. Obviously a nervous moment. It was impossible not to draw that AFL comparison, and I unfortunately did so on Sydney radio, which would have made no sense whatsoever. But it did happen, and it looked like he was going to spoil him, or shirt front him, or hip and shoulder, right down the middle. Yeah. Right, just like Paul Vanderhaar.
Like John Blakey.
Dermot Burt and Paul Vanderhaar in the 1989 second semi-final. But no, that's how it felt. Jadeja, he'd be the best fielder in the world alongside Glenn Maxwell, equal for. He's on the podium.
He's definitely the best Indian fielder ever.
Yeah, and to think that he was in the game immediately. I'm sure we'll talk more about Jadoo as we go through the Test match. But if he's any other discipline other than a spinner, he plays every week for India. But being the second spinner means that he kind of gets lost in all-rounder calculations. But more of that in a couple of days. I'm glad he's in the Hall of Fame straight away.
If he's any other player, he drops that catch. I just assumed it had been dropped until I realised it was Jadeja, and I thought maybe he's caught it, and he had. He'd held it.
Yeah,
he'd held on to
brilliant.
it. Tomorrow, what happens tomorrow? Casting forward, we've got a match on our hands.
Yeah, well, Melbourne, the day 2 is the best day to bat. Always has been, certainly in my lifetime. Forget about the track being lively today. It'll be beautiful tomorrow. So Pujara having ground his way to the close the way that he does so well. Gill seeing it so well. Yeah, Kohli's not walking out at 4, but it feels like the day to be batting, and it feels like they've got the confidence now, albeit having lost an early wicket. But if they're still batting at the close tomorrow, and that's great for the series. We were talking, anyone who was a pundit was saying, India all out 36, this will be 4-0. And I was trying to remain kind of calm about that. I think I said on the Daily Show at Adelaide that this side's made of sterner stuff than that, has been made in the Kohli image. And even though Kohli's not here, I think and hope from a competitive balance perspective that we're going to see them perform well again tomorrow, and the whole series will be set up beautifully.
But I think the flip side is that if they don't and they're bowled out, we're going to see another sterling performance from an Australian bowling attack that's being talked about as one of the best ever.
Yeah, you can't lose, can you? If Australia bowl them out for 160, well, we're standing here saying that, they are the greatest quartet to play for Australia. Either way, I'm happy with that.
All right. We'll be back tomorrow, day 2, for the India Daily, keeping you updated every day of every test match in the Australia-India series.
We should say before we go that if you want to watch us on video, you can do. We've been filming this, and if you're watching this on video, it's kind of like going through the fourth wall a second time.
Totally Inception here.
Each day we record this now. We've got Cam Fink back with us, who is our legendary cameraman editor in 2019 through the World Cup and the Ashes. He's with us this week, so we're going to take full advantage. Very pretty videos on YouTube and the Patreon page probably. Yep. So if you like our work anyway, patreon.com/the final word. We're going to have our New Year's special extravaganza in a few days, and our Jim Maxwell interview from before Christmas was just beautiful. So pick that all up in the feed.
All of those things. It's on the internet. Just throw in a fishing line with a hook on the end and you'll pull us out. Final word, India Daily. See you tomorrow.